Everyone, I have good news. The very brave officer who saved the Capitol from a violent thug and a domestic terrorist who did nothing of value with their whole lives had been exonerated of all wrongdoing and found completely justified for their heroic acts of stopping this criminal. Now, those who watch me know what I'm doing. Those who don't watch me might not know. But let's get this out of the way right here and now. The right does not care about Ashley Babbit. The right is pretending to care because they want to feed a victimhood narrative. They love the left's victimhood narrative, and they want it for themselves, and they've been doing this. Because guess what? You know what I'm seeing the right angry at? They're saying, you're telling me the Capitol Police investigated themselves and found they did nothing wrong? Did this not just happen to Ryan Whitaker last month? Nobody on the right covered that. What happened when all the white people got killed by police? Did the right cover that? There were protests over Hunter Britton. Did the right cover that? Did the right cover Johnny Hurley? No. Did they cover Daniel Shaver? No. Those cops got off and found they did nothing wrong? Did they cover it? No. Did they cover Christian Hall and that all the officers who shot him colluded and lied together? Did the right cover that? No. So I find it hilarious that this kept happening to white people, and now the right cares. Now, some people say this is their racism showing. I agree to an extent, because if this was a black person, they have a different tactic. They have a different standard, which is attack, malign, dig up their background. You know, they just character assassinate, which they don't do with white people. They'll just ignore white people. But if you really expect me to believe that now all of a sudden they care about her being shot by police, no. This is for a victimhood narrative. It is for partisan victimhood points. Because we're going to go through some of the common white ignorant arguments I'm seeing right now. And we are going to laugh at how they are now all of a sudden skeptical of arguments they have used constantly in the past. Comply or die. Obey the law. The officer didn't know. All right? All these things. Now we're bringing all these excuses that were brought up when it was black people being killed by police, now all of a sudden are not good excuses. And now what are they using this crisis for? Or now what are they using the situation for? You have them deflecting it to BLM. Going, well, BLM doesn't care. Okay, and let's look at this. Look at this. Now, there's a lot of videos I could go off of, but I think Matt Walsh perfectly exemplifies all of the white ignorant talking points I have heard, pulling out all the excuses now that I was told were not excuses for officers, or completely okay excuses for officers, that are now not okay excuses for officers. I think he covers all of them really good, and he accidentally snitches on himself in this one, so I thought this might be one of the better ones to go over. I'm actually going to do comments, but in another video, because I can't skip on the comments on some of these videos, because holy crap, I have to show you. The ignorance is amazing. But let's just look already at the title. BLM is silent about unarmed Trump supporter, and then there's comments like, oh, they're openly celebrating it. Okay, first of all, the organization we know is not going to care if it's very political and it's very racially charged. We know they're race hustlers, okay? The organization. They're going after the activists who are actually taunting this, and it amazes me the entitlement of the right to go, yeah, you know, we just mock and belittle and malign and attack every black person shot by police. But now when things are a little bit different, why aren't you defending us? Look, I don't think they should do it back necessarily, but on an emotional level, I understand where they're coming from. And I think it's absolutely insane that after you guys did this for years, now all of a sudden you want to run cry and go, why aren't they defending us? What the fuck do you think? You set these standards for officers. And now you have to eat that, right? Now you have to eat those. You have to live up to those standards, and now you're mad. And you expect people to defend you. I'm sorry, no. But let's go through this, because this is very interesting. Now, for this, also for the sake of time, I'm going to be jumping around just a little bit because it's a long video, and this will be like 30 or 40 minutes if I were to take on every point. I'm just going to grab the dumbest ones and the most hypocritical ones. Present that. If you want, go watch the whole video.
Last night, finally, more than a half a year after the unarmed Ashley Babbit was shot by a Capitol police officer in the Capitol building,
So there you go, right out of the start. Do you like how all of a sudden it's, oh, the unarmed person? Weird. I don't remember y'all bringing up George Floyd was unarmed. You never said that about him. You never went on the unarmed George Floyd. You never did that. Weird. Since when did being armed matter to the right? Because the right usually goes, the officer doesn't know if they're armed. They could have a gun anywhere on them. I don't hear that now. Now it's, oh, they were unarmed. Okay, so now that's an excuse.
The name of the shooter was made public. And not because it was officially released by anybody in a position of authority, as has happened in every other controversial police shooting in recent memory. They would have been fine just letting his name never make it officially into the public, even though it had been circulating online for some time now.
And guess what? That's why that was, because the right doxed the officer. Because remember, when LeBron puts out a tweet saying hashtag accountability, the right's going, oh, they're doxing him, they're putting him in danger, they're doing this, and then that, and whatever. Now, all of a sudden, the right is totally cool with doxing officers. Very interesting. I just like how now all of a sudden that's okay. Now it's not putting his life at risk all of a sudden. Interesting.
Who shot Ashley Babbit in the chest at near point-blank range as she was climbing through a broken door.
So do you like that framing? Trying to set it up as being shot at point-blank range, as that's not a valid excuse for an officer, even though officers have been using that excuse all the time as going, they were a threat, I feared for my life, etc., etc. Right had no problem with that. Now they do for some reason. Interesting. They pulled that excuse with Ryan Whitaker when they shot him twice in the back, point blank range. I didn't hear anyone complaining. So we'll quickly jump ahead where he cuts to the interview, and we're going to see the responses and how, again, here comes the white ignorant downplaying what happened and all of a sudden not taking the officer's words for things, which they always have in the past. So here you go.
Could you give us the nature of some of those threats?
They talked about, killing me, cutting off my head, very vicious and cruel things.
Racist things?
There were some racist attacks as well. It's all disheartening because I know I was doing my job.
Given the nature of the threats that you describe, do you have any concern about showing your face and identifying yourself?
Of course I do. That is a very vital point, and it's something that is frightening. I believe I showed the utmost courage on January 6th, and it's time for me to do that now.
Oh, I'm sorry. He actually credits himself with courage twice. So he has the utmost courage on January 6th by shooting an unarmed woman in the chest. He also has the utmost courage just by sitting down in front of a friendly media who is ready to celebrate him and accept everything that he says. There's a lot of...
Remember, just like Chauvin had the utmost courage, just like the people who shot Ryan Whitaker had the most courage, Hunter Britton, Breonna Taylor, Willie McCoy, Elijah McClain, all those officers, heroic. Officers go through so much, they're heroic. Now they're not.
Courage there as well. Now, what led into that is he was being asked about the threats, the response he's gotten after his name leaked on social media, and he
doxed, not leaked, doxed.
Claimed that he's getting all these threats, people threatening to cut off his head, he claims anyway. And you see how Lester Holt there, again, part of the PR team leading him, coaching him along, saying, racist threats? Was there racist threats too? Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, racism also.
Let's be honest. As a black person who's getting death threat, because we know the officer that shot Breonna Taylor was getting death threats. The right believed that immediately. Just because what? People were whiling over it? Now all of a sudden people were whiling at the Capitol. You really don't think the right sends death threats to people? And of course, if you're a black dude, of course you're gonna get racist threats from white ignorance. Have you met white ignorance? Like, go back to the days of the Wild West of Xbox Live back in the early 2000s, right? You get death threats for being black on the Xbox Live from some 5-year-old white kid, and you're gonna tell me some grown-ass QAnon-believing white ignorance didn't send racist death threats to this man. I'm just saying, now speculation, now you're gonna be skeptical, now all of a sudden well, now hang on, that doesn't sound right. But when it, depending on the officer, and then all of a sudden we're just gonna take their word for it. Okay.
We haven't seen any of that. We have no evidence of it, but that's what he tells us. At least nobody can accuse him of having an overabundance of humility, at least. And Byrd then goes on to explain what led up to him deciding to pull the trigger on that day. He claims that he issued repeated warnings. And that's one really important part of this. Did he say anything? Did he issue any warnings before firing his weapon?
Notice now how he claims, right? Now there's doubt and speculation, but they didn't have these before. Remember, they didn't ask these questions before. With other shootings, they were not asking these questions. You have white ignorance not asking these questions. Now, all of a sudden, they claimed with speculation.
He says that he did, but that's not substantiated by any video that we've ever been allowed to see or any witnesses that we've heard from. It seems like you probably could substantiate that. I'm sure on the other side of that door, there's some security footage, security cameras, all in that building. You might be able to hear some of that, but they haven't released that to us. We haven't heard from any witness who says that they heard him yelling and giving a warning, but he says that he did. And
why does that matter? Because in the court, they're just going to take the officer's word. That's always how been the court word. If it's a citizen's word against an officer's word, the court always takes the officer's side. People have been warning this. People who've been wanting police reform for the longest time have been warning this. They have brought this up countless times. This is how police get off with doing this crap all the time. They'll have a clear body cam footage, and they'll go, well, I feared for my life. I'm like, well, he felt that way. So, okay. So he says, issued a warning. Okay, the court is going to listen to that and go, well, he said that. Since when did the courts ever want, like, actual further evidence on an officer over this? I'm just saying, it's usually the right dismissing these claims all the time. And when I say the right, I really mean like conservatives, because I'm like, if you want police reform on the right, you basically got to side with the libertarians and the ANCAPs, because they're the only ones that'll agree. The conservatives will just bootlick.
We'll listen to that part here.
He says officers barricaded the door, what he considered the last line of defense.
I had been yelling and screaming as loud as I was, please stop, get back, stop. We had our weapons drawn. There's a gun!
Byrd only.
Okay, there we go. End of story. She didn't comply, so she dies. Comply or die. This is the right's argument all the time. If you just comply, this wouldn't have happened. If you just didn't break the law, this wouldn't have happened. Okay, now she's dead. Your standard, comply or die. There you go. So why are you mad? I don't see why you're mad. People been warning you about the comply or die argument and the problems with it, and y'all laughed at it. Y'all made excuses for it. And now it's back to hit you, and now y'all want to cry? Okay. And then you're going to make videos framing, why doesn't BLM care? Why do you think? All right, I want you to pay attention to this part up here, because, and this is the reason I chose this video, because this fool is about to snitch on himself. Watch this. I want you to remember what you're about to hear, and then see what he says afterwards.
Hitting Ashley Babbit. She was 35 years old, an Air Force veteran, Trump supporter, and QAnon follower.
I was taking a tactical stance. You're ultimately hoping that your commands will be complied with, and
yeah, what's the problem with that? Comply or die. Okay.
Unfortunately, they were not.
When you fired, what could you see? Where were you aiming?
You're taught to aim for center mass. The subject was sideways, and I could not see her full motion of her hands or anything. So
that sounds like a valid excuse to me. That's That's what the right always defend. I couldn't see her hands. I don't know. She could have had a weapon. Maybe. He didn't know. He feared for his life. Again, not my arguments. These are the conservatives' arguments. So I don't know why they're crying about it. This is their standard. Not my standard, their standard.
I guess her movement, caused the discharge to fall where it did.
And what did you think this individual was doing at that moment?
She was posing a threat.
Yeah, see, look at that face. He even has the shrug. He knows. She was a threat. Again, their standard. So, I don't see why you're mad. Okay, now watch this part. Remember when I said, remember what you were about to see before? Watch this. Watch this fool snitch on himself.
House of Representatives.
Now, you note there how they also included the bit about how she was a QAnon follower. Not sure what that has to do with anything. Now, we're told that George Floyd, being a violent felon who rushed into a woman's home and put a gun to her stomach and robbed her in front of her kids, that history, those biographical details about George Floyd are not relevant at all. In fact, if you bring them up, you're a horrible person. You're a racist even somehow.
One, yeah, they aren't relevant. And two, people weren't saying people are a horrible racist for bringing that up. People were saying, calling people who brought up George Floyd's past horrible racists, usually because they seem to only bring up the past of specific people who are shot by police. I don't remember people looking up Tony Timpa's past. I don't remember people looking up Daniel Shaver, Christian Hall, and Jared Lackey. I don't remember the right bringing up their past. But the right got mad when some people, to prove a point, brought up Kyle Rittenhouse's past as a woman beater. So the reason people are saying, yo, the right's racist, is because they only bring up certain people's past. And they think we are dumb enough to not notice that. But anyway.
For simply bringing that up, it's got nothing to do with anything, we're told. And yet the fact that Ashley Babbit believed in some kooky QAnon thing, what does that have to do with anything? Did he know that? Isn't that what we're always told about George Floyd? Well, yeah, he might have done all these horrible things and been this violent, terrible scumbag of a person, but the officer didn't know that. Didn't know that. That doesn't get him off the hook. Well, what information about Ashley Babbit did Michael Byrd have?
Okay, so did any of you catch how he just snitched on himself right here? So if you've watched him, you know he always likes to bring up, he refers to George Floyd, and I will quote, as a violent criminal who did nothing of value with his whole life. Now, if you actually followed the dude after the fact, you would know that that is not true. So, one, her being a QAnon supporter is actually relevant because that was a possible motive for what she did. So that comparison doesn't even make sense. Two, this is where he snitched on himself. So he admits that that is an unfair comparison or an unfair thing to bring up as a way to basically attack her character, but then immediately goes and does it to George Floyd, showing that he knew all this time, he pulled the conservatives' favorite card, which is the dumb card. So he knew all this time that the only reason to bring up George Floyd's past is to character attack and malign him, because he knows it's not relevant, but he was doing it anyway. This is why you gotta be careful, because you gotta be careful. Some people, you'll have like your ABL types, who actually believe what they believe, but they're just dumb. And then you have other types who play the dumb card, which is different. That's where they pretend to not know what they're doing, but they know what they're doing. They pretend to not know a concept, but they know what they're doing. So let me get this straight. Notice, he's going to claim now you can't bring up Babbit being a QAnon supporter because it's not relevant to that specific scenario, which it actually kind of was because that was a motive for the Capitol riot. Then say, okay, then if you're going to say that, you can't bring that up because otherwise we can't bring up George Floyd's past because that's an attack, basically. And then immediately goes and attacks George Floyd's character. There you go. He admits these are unfair character attacks that weren't relevant to the scenario, and then immediately does it anyway. And I can't help but notice he only does it when certain people are attacked by police. I remember a long time ago, like a year ago, he actually brought up Daniel Shaver. No real outrage over it, and that the fact that that cop got off with nothing. But I can't help but notice you didn't try to malign him in any way. You did with Andrew Brown Jr., you did with George Floyd, you did with Breonna Taylor. But, okay. So this just shows you, clowns like this, they know what they're doing.
None. Now, this leads us to perhaps the most revealing point in the interview. Holt asks him if the fact that he didn't know whether she was armed altered his decision-making at all. And listen to his answer, because it's very important here.
Her family points out that she was not armed.
That's correct.
The fact that you weren't aware whether she was armed or not, did that alter the decision-making?
It did not.
What should we make of the fact that there were other officers in other potentially life-threatening situations who didn't use their service weapons that day?
Also, I like how the right brought up that argument, because people brought up that argument all the time and the right dismissed it. They'd go, that's a different officer, that's a different department. Because other people would bring up, hey, there's maybe better ways this could have been handled than jumping to lethal force, and the right didn't accept that. So now, it's kind of weird that now they want to go, there are other ways it could have handled it. I brought that up with Andrew Brown Jr. I was like, you didn't have to execute the dude when he posed no threat. And guess what? Guess what kind of stuff I got? Well, he took off in a car. He could have hit someone. Oh, so we're killing people for future crimes now. Okay. She could have had a bomb in her backpack. She could have been armed. We don't know. So we had to do it because, you know, future crimes. There we go. Again, your standard, not my standard. This is the right standard. But let's jump ahead to an excuse the right never cared about and now all of a sudden cares about.
The Capitol Police did an investigation of themselves and discovered that they themselves hadn't done anything wrong. Well, that settles that, I suppose.
Police have been doing this forever. Nick has been warning y'all about this, and y'all mocked and belittled, had no problems with this. Again, just happened to Ryan Whitaker last month, and nobody on the right said anything. This happened in countless brutalizations and murders of white people at the hands of police, and the right didn't say anything. And now they want to pretend like they're mad. They don't, like I said, they don't care about white people being shot by police. They don't care about black people being shot by police. They want a partisan victimhood narrative. Just like the mainstream media likes to race bait when white officers shoot black people. But then that same mainstream media will not bring up white people being killed by police because it's a partisan victimhood narrative they're trying to paint. They want to generate anger because anger gets them views and views get them money. Because this has been consistently happening and I haven't heard a fucking word from the right. And now they want to pretend like that's not a valid excuse, even though the police have been using that excuse for decades. Sure, okay, I really think you care about that.
That would be one thing. He's saying that even now, looking back on it in hindsight, he did save all of those lives. I mean, how? We know that Ashley Babbit, we know now, some of this he might not have known at the time, but now we know that Ashley Babbit was a 5'2" unarmed female.
And I didn't hear that excuse for Elijah McClain. He was tiny. Those cops brutalized the crap out of him. And I didn't hear... Well, he could be on drugs. He could have all this stuff. I don't know. Maybe she was on. Maybe the cop. He could have been on drugs. They use that excuse all the fucking time. And I didn't hear her speak out about. Remember when the cops? I'm sorry, I forget her name. The 12-year-old black girl. Remember when they pepper sprayed her, threw her in the back of the car? I didn't hear anyone complaining about that. Going, what threat did she pose? No, I heard everyone ignore that. Again, we're playing the cop has superpowers game. He said earlier, maybe she could have had a bomb in her backpack. What if she did? Then she did save countless lives. I can play the what if game too. We played the what if scenario with other people. Was it Philando Castile, I believe? I remember he played the what if game with him. Okay, we'll play the what if game. The officer doesn't know that. He said earlier he couldn't see her hands. He doesn't know what happened. Again, I like to reiterate to prove a point. Not my standard. This is the right standard.
And even now, he's saying by killing her, he saved countless lives. What was she going to do? Was she going to bust through the window and murder dozens of armed cops with her bare hands? Was she Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, some kind of trained assassin? The claim from Byrd is absurd on its face. The whole interview was absurd.
It's not at all absurd if you even brought up the point that she could have had a bomb in her backpack. And then you go, well, now we know that wasn't the case. Well, yeah, hindsight, my guy. Like, no shit. But again, even though that possibility is low, I didn't hear that. But I heard these same arguments being made by the right towards other people brutalized by police. I heard all these, what if they're on drugs? What if they're this? What if they're that? Okay, so we're going to apply this standard that they have to Ashley Babbit. Okay? And by the right standard, this was a violent thug who played stupid games and won stupid prizes and should have just complied. And if she had complied, she wouldn't be dead.
Any other media outlet at all. And that's one important point to be made about this, of course. Before we talk about whether Babbitt's shooting was justified based on the objective facts of the case, it is inarguable that the people defending it, every single one of them, would be exploding with outrage if she had a different skin color and a different political affiliation. All of these defund the police champions have finally discovered one unarmed shooting of a civilian that they support, which only proves what we already knew. That all of their...
Now, if this was Portland, and this was the court building, and they shot they shot a black protester at that point, or a black rioter at that point, do you think the right would be this charitable? Do you think the right would be affording all of these same charities that they're affording to her? I don't think so. You're not pointing out their hypocrisy because we know their hypocrisy. You're pointing out the right's hypocrisy. Because you've shown when they're upset about a shooting, you mock and belittle it, and now you're mad that you're upset about a shooting and they're mocking and belittling you. How does that feel? And now you want to pretend like, now y'all freaking white ignorants on the right want to pretend like y'all mad? Okay, you're just getting what you dished out. You can't deal with what you dished out. Because I guarantee you, if this was a group of BLM rushing the Capitol, and she was black and got shot, do you think the right would be making these arguments? I think we both know the answer to that. We know that would not be the case.
That all of their concern over police brutality really has nothing to do with police brutality at all. And I am not aware, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that none of these people have come to the defense of Ashley Babbit.
Question is, though, why should they? Like I said, the right, and he contributed this especially, mocked and belittled all the time when it was the other way around. Now they have, this is my problem, they have the audacity to go, why aren't you coming to our defense? Because why should they? I understand on principle why they should. Sure, on an emotional level, I understand why I've seen a lot of people mocking her. I get it on an emotional level. Because you guys have been doing this for fucking years. So I don't blame them. I understand it. I'm just thinking, wow, Who could have seen that coming? You think they're gonna hold you to your own standard now and use it against you, and now you want to act mad? You're not necessarily pointing out their hypocrisy, you're pointing out the right's hypocrisy. When their standard is turned on them, now all of a sudden, it's not okay. That basically sums up the whole problem with all these ignorant. And like I said, I think out of all the videos I have shown, his encapsulates most of these, like I said, ignorant ass talking points. And the lack of self-awareness to show that the right is getting what they have been dishing out. And again, I do mostly mean, when I say the right, I'm mostly referring to conservatives, because as like I said, I'm more on the libertarian side. Me and my other libertarian friends, we've all been like, yo, fuck these tyrants. So as far as libertarians go, I have no problem with them. It's the conservative bootlicking I have a problem with, that all of a sudden went outside the window. And my favorite part is them pretending to care about Ashley Babbitt, because like I said in the beginning of the video, unarmed white people shot by police, they didn't show concern, they didn't show any of the community protests. They don't care either. They're just getting their own hypocrisy exposed, and now they're mad. But like I said, I'm going to split this up because this is a long video. Because I have to show you comments on multiple videos of this. Oh my god, I can't believe what I have read. So we're going to get to that one next time.